to a lot of developers' questions in there. I was just curious to get your thoughts. SEC obviously sent a Wells notice. We talked about this before to Brian Armstrong of Coinbase. He said he's thinking about or considering relocating out of the U.S. if the regulatory clarity does not improve.
Crypto's dead in America.
It is dead in America.
Crypto's dead in America. I mean, now you had Gensler. You had Gensler even blaming the banking crisis on crypto. So the United States authorities have firmly pointed their guns at crypto.
Is it a scapegoat, or was it a fuck around, find out moment for crypto in your mind, or a little bit of both?
I don't know. I just think that they were probably the ones that were the most threatening to the establishment.
Okay.
And they were the ones that, in fairness to the regulators, did push the boundaries more than any other sector of the startup economy. And yeah, so now they're paying the price for that. The bill has come due for them.
Sacks, is it a fuck around, find out moment? Is it protecting the American dollar? Somewhere in between? Or incompetence on regulators' part?
The more I think about it, the more I think it's probably not a coincidence that you're seeing all these concerns about de-dollarization at the same time they're cracking down on crypto. So look, there were a bunch of crypto companies that might have done shady things, but I think we all agree that Coinbase was not one of them. Coinbase was the gold standard in terms of doing everything right. And they've just asked over and over again for a regulatory framework. They're just like, tell us how to operate and we'll do it. So I think Chamath is right that they're effectively banning crypto in the United States. They're going to drive all these companies overseas, which is terrible for American innovation. I don't know exactly where blockchain and crypto are going to go from here, but I think that we should find that out in America. You know, we don't want that innovation going offshore.
You bring up a really good point too. It's just like Coinbase played by the rules, stood in line, tried to do the right things, it seems, at every step along the way, right? Everything from board composition to executive composition to how they tried to interact with the regulators, yet they were probably the furthest away from getting a license. The one that came the closest was the one that was the most fraudulent, which is FTX.
Yeah, it was fascinating.
How is that even possible?
I mean,
because he had skills in gaming the system.
Yeah, he's splashy cashy.
Well, he ponied up large amounts of money because it wasn't his money, so it was easy for him to make huge donations. But he knew how to play the game. To quote SBF, he said, "This is the dumb game we woke Westerners play. We say the right shibboleth so everyone likes us." That's the game he was playing, which is my whole concern about if we jump the gun on regulating AI too quickly, it'll turn into another, woke game that everyone's going to play. So
here's how the world works. Regulate yourself, behave yourself, act in the interest of consumers, or get regulated or smashed. And I think we've gone over this. We talked about it, in fact, last week. Whether the movie industry, crypto, AI, regulate yourself, behave properly, don't push the boundaries too far. You can bend the rules, but you don't want to break them.
I think the regulate yourself, you use the MPAA. I don't think that's the right example. I think if you're going to regulate yourself, look at the tobacco industry. They tried to regulate themselves, but what they did was just lie to maximize profit in an area that was much less benign than movies and content. Maybe you could have some lascivious content in a movie or a video game or an album, but that was a lot less harmful than smoking, which not just impacted the smoker, but it turned out the secondhand smoker as well, or the secondhand smoke. So it touched everybody, right? You could be in a restaurant, not smoke, and yet
have years of your life taken.
So I think that the self-regulation for areas that impact everybody, independent of whether you participate in the system or not, is where you have to look for good examples, Jason. And I'm not sure there are many good examples of self-regulation in those kinds of systems.
I mean, I like your workshopping it here. I mean, some restaurants would have a smoking section and a non-smoking section before there was regulation, right? And I think if crypto had been more thoughtful about, hey, which tokens, NFT projects we're going to support, which ones we're not going to, that maybe they would have avoided a little bit of this. I'm not sure. It's hindsight's 2020 here, but a little more regulation.
I don't think those smoking, non-smoking sections worked too well. The smoke went all over the place.
Exactly.
Can you remember? You remember coming out of a bar and you woke up the next day and your clothes smelled like smoke?
No. You'd have to take a shower when you went to a bar or a restaurant or a club. You would have to come home, take a shower because your hair
The
and
oil,
your clothes
the
with
smoke.
smell of smoke. Oh,
you couldn't sleep in a bed. Then your bed you had to change your sheets.
Disgusting.
Remember when you went on a commercial flight? They had a smoking section and a non-smoking section.
Non-smoking
it's
section.
A tube.
Yeah.
It's a tube. The smoke gets all over the place.
No. You know you're on the wrong airline when they have the welded shut ashtrays. They used to have an ashtray in every seat. In the armrest was his.
By the way, a friend of mine. This is like such a throwback, but a friend of mine, well-known guy that you know. I'll say the name. You can bleep it out.
Yeah.
Nick, please bleep that out.
Bleep that out, please. Very important. We don't want to.
He's a notorious smoker, and so I've flown with him.
Oh, that's the worst.
And we get in there on his plane, and then he shuts the door, and I'm like, smells a little odd in here. Smells a little clovey. And all of a sudden he starts smoking, and I'm like, 7 hours? I'm going to have to be in this tube.
What are the pilots? Do the pilots get hazard pay? I mean, how do you compensate them?
God.
I mean, this is not a turboprop he's on. He can't crack the window.
No. It was a huge global. It was
Yeah, at least it has 3 cabins. You could go to the back cabin.
Felt so sick. I mean,
it's the worst.
It's the worst. Smoking's the worst. Smoking is the worst.
All right. Well, we didn't. So long to the Sultan of Silence, as science rather. There. Polling update here, Sacks. I don't mean to poke the bear. I know it was a rough week with the Fox News.
Bring it up. Bring it up.
No, go for it.
Quick polling update between DeSantis and Trump.
Not going to happen. DeSantis is not happening.
In late March, news of Trump's indictment boosted him over DeSantis by 26 percentage points among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents. But earlier this week, the same poll showed that Trump's lead shrunk by 10 points in the last 2 weeks to just a 16-point advantage, which is still significant. But there's more. A University of New Hampshire Survey Center poll. I don't know if any of these polls are reasonable or not. Sometimes I call people on the phone. I don't know who's got a landline. Released Wednesday showed a 20-point DeSantis deficit. What's going on here, Sacks? Did your boy peak too early?
No, I don't think so. If you look at the Republican primary field, DeSantis is the only person who's got a shot other than Trump. You look at Nikki Haley, she's polling in the 3-5% range. All the others are at 1 or 2%. There's not a candidate other than DeSantis that has over 5%. So in my view, this is a Trump-DeSantis race. Now, what you saw is that when Alvin Bragg pressed charges and indicted Trump, it created a lot of sympathy for Trump among Republicans. Effectively, what happened is Republicans registered their displeasure with Alvin Bragg by indicating support for Trump.
Let's go.
And that's what you'd expect to happen. And a lot of people speculated that might be the purpose of Bragg's prosecution, is to make Trump the candidate. So we knew that was happening. But I think this new poll that you just mentioned is really interesting because it shows that sugar high of Trump's poll ratings was a temporary bounce, and it's coming down somewhat. And so, what you saw actually is that this huge poll bounce that Trump got is somewhat normalizing. Now, there's no question that DeSantis is running behind Trump, and he's got his work cut out for him if he's going to upset Trump as the nominee. But this thing is just getting started. I mean, DeSantis isn't even formally announced yet. And remember, we're still very, very early in this race. The primary battle that this most reminds me of would be Obama versus Hillary in 2007. And at this time in 2007, Hillary had a huge advantage over Obama. She was considered the favorite. She was considered the one who couldn't lose. And it was Obama that pulled off a huge upset. And he did it by out fundraising her, out hustling her, especially in building organization in some of those early primary states. And then he eventually created a narrative that it was time to turn the page. But he didn't do that until much later in the year, much closer to the primary. The first Republican primary is not till February, so there's plenty of time here. And we'll see what happens.
Chamath, any thoughts?
I think Nikki Haley is going to win the Republican nomination.
All right,
the more people. Here's the thing: the number of people that have told me the most impressive moment with DeSantis was before they met him. The second most impressive moment was their first meeting. And then it just falls off a cliff where he becomes more and more unimpressive the more and more time you spend with this guy.
There you go. Hey, Nikki Haley, come on the pod.
Nikki Haley is the opposite.
Nikki Haley announced that in all of Q1, she raised $5 million. Extremely unimpressive. You were probably 20% of that, Chamath.
Hey, Nikki Haley, come on the pod. We'll double it.
How much of Nikki Haley's $5 million was you?
Listen. 0. I can say definitively, you said Q1? 0.
Yeah, Q1. Okay.
Here we go.
0.
Well, let me ask a question here, because I'm not informed on it, but you're a master strategist here, 1,600 rated chess player, Sacks.
That's not that good.
Well, I mean, it's double 800 where I'm at. You're killing me in 27 moves on average. DeSantis is fighting with Disney over and over again. He's getting a little involved in the LGBTQ, everything, and he just seems to be getting involved in the culture wars. Is that like a primary strategy, and then he moves to the center when he comes to the general? And do you agree with this general fighting with Disney and the culture war stuff?
Well,
I'm just talking strategically, not your personal opinion on these issues. I know that you're a very tolerant person.
Yeah. So I think this is an issue that works for him, certainly in the Republican primary, but I also think it's going to work for him in the general. And you have to remember that this bill that they're fighting over was a parental rights bill that basically it gave parents the right to know what their kids were being taught in schools. And it basically prohibited the teaching of this sort of gender ideology in schools. And I think most parents are on board with that. Now, he didn't go looking to pick a fight with Disney. Disney then got involved and took the side that calling this a don't say gay bill, which I think just factually is not true. The bill doesn't mention, gay or homosexuality or anything like that. It was really about this trans issue. And Disney got involved, and this was Bob Chapek, and Bob Chapek lost his job, and Iger came in, and Iger has said that he had basically lectured the Disney employees saying that we need to stay out of politics and we need to respect our audience's views. So I think that it was Disney who kind of interfered. I think this is overall played to DeSantis' benefit. And look, the problem for Disney, they may win the battle over this or that tax benefit that they're fighting over, but they've lost the war over this issue because parents used to be able to trust that they could just plop their kid down in front of a Disney movie or a Disney show, like Disney was like the babysitter, and they just 100% absolutely trusted all Disney content. And if you look at polling now, Disney's brand, it used to have like a NPS of like in the 50s, is now in the single digits because let's call it half the country's parents, the more Republican ones, don't fully trust Disney's content and programming anymore.
Really?
That is a huge,
I trust Disney implicitly. What could they ever do that's objectionable? I've never seen anything objectionable.
A lot of parents are questioning what content Disney might be putting in their recent programming. Obviously, we're not talking about the stuff that we grew up on. So look, whether you believe that is a problem or not, what I'm saying is this has been a brand disaster for Disney getting involved with DeSantis this way. They should really, I think, just try to patch this thing up. I don't understand the benefit for Disney.
It's a bad look for both. It's a bad look for both people. Yeah.
Well, I think I understand the benefit for DeSantis. I don't understand the benefit for Disney. If I were them, I'd be trying to patch this up.
I think there's a really valid discussion to be had about representation in movies and all that stuff, and I'm very pro that. The thing I think all parents agree is we should just at least know what's being taught to our kids, and we can have a thoughtful discussion about it. There seems to be some small group of people that thinks we should hide from parents what they're actually getting, what's being taught. And I find that's very strange. I think just a little bit of like transparency and what's being taught in schools is an obvious thing that nobody should be disagreeing on it.
To Sacks' point, I think it was Pew that put out a study recently. It is the most polarizing issue amongst Americans where Democrats and Republicans are literally on opposite sides of the spectrum.
Well, this is going to be a big issue.
On the whole trans issue. Now, despite the polarization, in terms of the quantity of the number of people, it's actually an important issue for a small percentage of both sides. So it's a highly complicated political dynamic in America.
Yeah, very.
So this is where DeSantis clearly has taken the approach that not only is this important to the base to win the nomination, but it's going to scale into the general. And it could very well be, but it's a very divisive issue.
Yeah, I wish people were given a little bit more consideration, and maybe they could have. I feel like maybe we're covering this issue too much. I've heard some other folks in the community say like maybe people could be given a little bit of their privacy and like, to handle these things.
I think you're right, Jake, Cal, in this sense. I think this issue has become a lightning rod. And whenever you have a lightning rod issue, the amount of attention paid to it, it seems disproportionate to the attention on that issue. However, I would say that this is a lightning rod for a larger issue, which is the quality of education in this country, which I think is shockingly bad. And it's bad because of the decline of standards. They're getting rid of advanced math. They're getting rid of grades,
Unions,
test
choice,
taking.
competition.
Exactly. And the schools are run by these unions who are managing it for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the students. And look, there is a significant ideological component that's crept into these schools as well. So look, I think that overall, I think that when you get into the general, you have to up-level the issue and talk about it in broader terms, that every kid in our country deserves a high-quality, non-ideological education. I think if you can do that, you will get 70, 80% of the public on your side on this issue.
Yeah, I feel like, I
think that's right.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. Democrats, Republicans, everybody in between. If you're a parent, you're not looking for an ideological battle at school. You're looking for math, science, technology, history, creativity. There's a whole bunch of other things that we should be really focused on. All right, listen, this has been another amazing episode of the All In Podcast. To people going to the episode 125 meetups, you can type in All In Meetups. Our team over there of super fans are doing it in over 50 cities the day this comes out, so you may miss it, but you can sign up for the next one. I'll be phoning in and zooming it to them. So for the fans, you crazy lunatics getting together, have a great time. Have a great time, and tweet it and mention us on Twitter. For the Sultan of Science, the Rain Man, the Dictator, I am the world's greatest moderator, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We'll let your winners ride.
Rain Man, David Sacks.
And instead, we open source it to the fans, and they've just gone crazy with it.
Love you, besties. Queen of Quinoa. Besties are back.
Code 13. That's my dog taking a notice in your driveway. Sacks.
My haberdasher will meet me at Clinton. We should all just get a room and just have one big huge orgy because they're all just useless. It's like this sexual tension that they just need to release somehow.
Wet your beak. Wet your beak.
Your feet.
That's gonna be good. We need to get merch.
Besties are
I'm
back.
going all